Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California. Find us on the internet at www.commonwealthclub.org. I'm Ann Clark, a member of the club and the Environment and Natural Resources Program. Our program tonight is Golden Gate Park Under Siege. It is my pleasure to welcome our moderator, Jim Chappell. Jim is recognized as a distinguished leader in San Francisco, first as the longtime executive director of SPUR, San Francisco Planning and Urban Research. Currently, Jim is serving as interim director of San Francisco Beautiful. Jim will introduce our panel. Jim?
Thank you, Ann Clark. Golden Gate Park, a park under siege? Treasured by millions of people from all over the world, Golden Gate Park's meadows, forests, and lakes have served as a refuge from the pressures of life, for both people and wildlife, for over 140 years. Yet throughout its history, the park has attracted those who view it as free land available for their favorite projects, some good, some not good at all. In addition, with today's budget crisis at all levels of government, it sometimes seems like everything is on the table and that some view this precious civic asset first as a source of revenue and only secondly as a public treasure. Tonight we will explore some of the issues that are driving this civic conversation and hopefully add to our listeners' understanding. Democracy requires passionate and robust public argument. In doing so, we seek a dialogue that advances the common good and appreciates and respects divergent opinion. Let me introduce our panelists tonight. First will be Mark Buell, President of the San Francisco Recreation and Parks Commission, the city charter mandated governing body of the Recreation and Parks Department. He's also chair of the board of the Golden Gate Park National Conservancy and chair of the America's Cup Organizing Committee. And I'll introduce everyone right now. The second speaker to the right is Anthea Hartig, Ph.D., Director of the Western Office of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, a private, nonprofit, 270,000-member organization dedicated to saving historic places and revitalizing America's communities. Next will be Catherine Howard, ASLA, a landscape architect and founding member of the Friends of the Music Concourse, the Park Rangers Coalition, the Golden Gate Preservation Alliance, and San Francisco Ocean Edge, all community organizations focused on protecting Golden Gate Park. Then Mike Lines, Conservation Director and General Counsel for Environmental Matters for the Golden Gate Audubon Society, a more than 10,000-member conservation organization. Last up will be George Woodring, President of the West of Twin Peaks Central Council, a group of 17 neighborhood organizations, a soccer dad, soccer coach and sponsor, a Golden Gate Park supporter, and columnist for the West Side Observer. Each speaker will take 6 minutes to give us their thoughts on the subject. We will then have 15 minutes for questions and answers, and as Ann said, please fill out the question cards, and then at the end we'll come back and each speaker in a reverse order will have 1 minute to sum up. Mark Buell.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you to the Commonwealth Club for including me on this panel. I thought it was important to have a Recreation and Park Department representative when talking about Golden Gate Park. In 1870, William Hammond Hall, the original park designer, defined the park as, I quote, a portion of land with the semblance of natural formation but adopted by art to the requirements of large and varied bodies of pleasure seekers. It is the requirements of a large and varied body of pleasure seekers that we at Rec and Park try to satisfy. And this body will be getting larger in the years to come, and I speak of the pleasure seekers. We know that from an environmental standpoint, urban sprawl is no longer either desirable or acceptable. Every major environmental group and every major planning organization tells us that cities must absorb growth. To that end, we at Rec and Park have a responsibility to accommodate that change. We also know that growth in the population is driven primarily by immigration. As many of you know, if the United States were left to its own without immigration, we'd be a declining population. We have less than 2.2 people per couple in reproduction. It's immigration, and as some of you may know, the Hispanic community in a few years will be the majority of the California population. And I think it's important to know that the growth in the population will bring great and rich cultural diversity to the city. We at Rec and Park have a responsibility to meet that challenge as well. In addition, the Recreation and Park Department budget has been cut $43 million in the last 7 years. This translates into a shortage of approximately 16 to 30 gardeners in Golden Gate Park, depending on how you define those responsibilities. The reduction of recreation opportunities and the reduced use of facilities. And so we're challenged by concern for the environment, a changing population, and a substantially reduced budget resources. It is in that context that we make decisions at the Commission. According to the most recent Neighborhood Park Council survey of over 1,400 park users, the #1 problem facing the park is park maintenance. That is a direct translation into the budget cuts and fewer gardeners. The #1 solution that was identified by that survey, 92%, believe that park amenities should be used for revenue generation, and they used an example of bike rentals, but also weighed in with support for vendors, leases, and concessions. It's important, therefore, when speaking about Golden Gate Park, to look at what's the recent record for Rec and Park. In the last 10 years, we have spent over $90 million in Golden Gate Park. $90 million. I could read you a litany of the projects, but I'm going to read the ones that relate to historic resources and contributing features to the National Register of Historic Places. The Japanese Tea Garden, Portraits of the Past, Stowe Lake, Children's Quarters Playground, Concourse Fountain, Concourse Bandshell, Botanical Garden Path Improvements, Bowling Green, restrooms, Rhododendron Dell, Millwright Cottage, which is in progress, the Polo Fields renovation, the Murphy Windmills, which is in progress, the Park Aid Station, which is in progress, and the others, $3.1 million for the Open Space Fund, $54 million in grants. That's the resources that came to bear, and 15.6 in voter-supported bonds, 12 million in private gifts, 5.1 from the general fund. Other projects include Kezar and Panhandle lighting and improvements, Golden Gate Park compressed natural gas station, the Golden Gate Park County Fair building, the eastern entrance improvements, the Corrette Children's Quarters, the north and south lakes, the Panhandle restrooms, the urban forestry yard, the bison paddock, the music concourse I mentioned already. So we've had, and then there's lots of infrastructure improvements as well. Now I'm going to get down to 2 minutes here, I see. So I'm going to mention very quickly that the projects that are in contention, the soccer fields, for 75 years those have been sports fields. The state of the art is synthetic turf in all soccer fields in all parks in the country. The debate has gone on, and it's concluded that that is the way to proceed. What that does is reduce the amount of water and maintenance required, but it more importantly increases from 4,738 hours of use a year to 14,340, almost 3 times the amount. And when you look at the cultural changes going on and the demands in the city for the kind of recreation uses, soccer is huge. See, I have 1 minute left, but I'm going to read. We're in favor of children and we're in favor of soccer, said Mark Welther, Executive Director of the Golden Gate Audubon Society. But we want to make sure that there's a full and fair hearing of all the environmental issues that need to be considered in order to make a good decision about this. I agree 100% with the Audubon Society. Stowe Lake, I have a National Parks magazine that uses the Muir Woods vendor as the example of what we ought to be doing in sustainability, organic food, and good practices from an environmental standpoint. They want to make that the national model in national parks. That's the entity that was selected as the vendor in Stowe Lake. I'm hearing hissing from the crowd. So I guess they don't support sustainable, and I'm not going to get to all the projects, so I'm going to say finally that we also closed and soon to be closed the Haight-Ashbury Recycling Center. That is an industrial use in the park. I hear some more hissing. It's an outdated facility. We require
I'm going to
recycling.
say that I don't want to hear any comments from the audience, okay?
I wasn't expecting applause, but I must tell you that we are trying to make balanced decisions at the Recreation and Park Commission, and I thank you very much.
Okay.
I would, as your coordinator tonight, please, please, please do not hiss or make noises of any sort at this time. You're welcome to applaud and clap as the program ends. If you do have an item that you want to express your concern or judgment about, that's what the program cards are about. So please, let's remember that this is a debate and it's a discussion, and it's important for us to keep it at that level. Thank you.
Yes. Anthea Hartig.
Thank you, Jim and Dr. Ann Clark.